It begins with a whisper, the faint clink of copper echoing from a half-forgotten drawer. A single cent, ordinary, overlooked, yet hidden within that unassuming piece of metal lies a mystery so profound that it has rewritten the history of American coinage and ignited the dreams of collectors across generations. The year was 1960. The nation stood at the edge of change. Dwight D. Eisenhower was in the White House, John F. Kennedy was on the rise, and America was preparing to leave the black and white era behind. But deep inside the Denver Mint, something else remarkable was happening. A story not of politics or progress, but of precision. And imperfection, the coin in question? The Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin struck at the Denver Mint, the 1960 small date over large date variety. A copper alloy disc barely an inch wide, yet worth, to some collectors, more than a mansion. How could something so small carry such unimaginable value? To answer that, we must travel back to a time when every die, every engraving, was a dance between human hands and machine. In 1960, the Mint faced an unusual dilemma: the date on the Lincoln 1-cent design. Early in the year, the digits 1 to 960 appeared large and full, proud and deeply cut into the master die. But as months passed, engravers altered the style, refining the numerals into smaller, more compact figures to improve striking quality. In theory, this should have been a smooth transition. But numismatic history is rarely neat. Somewhere in the heart of Denver, during that quiet switch from large date to small date, a handful of working dies, meant for one, were paired with the other. The result: a hybrid error unlike any other, the 1960 small date over large date Lincoln 1-cent coin. For decades, most people who held it never noticed the secret. They spent it at diners, dropped it into jukeboxes, or let it roll between their fingers as they bought a pack of gum. But to the trained eye, to the collector who studies the language of metal, this tiny overlap of numerals told a different story, one of rarity, chaos, and chance. The D mint mark beneath Lincoln's portrait marked its birthplace, Denver, Colorado. Yet within that mint mark hides a second layer of intrigue. The Denver Mint was known for its efficiency, high output, crisp strikes, minimal mistakes, which is why the existence of this particular die pairing stunned even the most experienced numismatists. When collectors first began discovering them in circulation during the early 1960s, whispers spread across the hobby community. Was it an overdate? A double strike? A mint worker's oversight? Each theory carried its own flavor of mystery. What united them all was the realization that something extraordinary had slipped past the quality control gates of one of America's most trusted institutions, and then came the turning point. In 2019, an exceptional specimen, graded by the professional coin grading service, PCGS, reached auction. Its surfaces gleamed with an almost satin finish, each curve of Lincoln's profile untouched by time. The overlaid numerals of the date were crisp, bold, undeniable. When the hammer fell, that single cent had commanded a staggering $857,000, nearly $1 million for what once bought a stick of gum. That sale sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. Why? Because moments like these rekindle the dream that every collector secretly holds. That somewhere, in their pocket change, their attic jar, or their grandfather's cigar box, lies a fortune disguised as a penny. But the 1960 story isn't just about luck. It's about the intersection of history, art, and economics. You see, the Lincoln 1-cent coin has always been more than metal. Since its introduction in 1909, commemorating the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it has symbolized honesty, endurance, and the promise of the American spirit. Yet over the decades, subtle variations, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, misplaced digits, have transformed these coins into a living puzzle. Each flaw whispers of human hands at work, of fatigue, haste, or innovation in the quiet hum of the minting room. Collectors don't just chase value, they chase meaning. To own a rare 1960 small date over large date is to hold a tangible moment when perfection slipped and history breathed through copper, and the numbers prove it. In a market once dominated by silver dollars and gold eagles, demand for vintage Lincoln 1-cent varieties has surged. Collectors who once dismissed the humble cent now scour rolls and estate lots with magnifying lenses and hearts pounding. Because when one coin fetches over $800,000, the line between pocket change and legacy wealth suddenly blurs. But what gives this coin its staggering value? Rarity, yes, but rarity alone doesn't guarantee riches. The numismatic market thrives on three intertwined forces: scarcity, story, and condition. Scarcity ignites desire. Only a handful of these hybrid 1960 D cents are known in mint state condition. The story adds emotional gravity, a minting mishap during a transformative era. And condition? That's where dreams are made or lost. A single scratch, a tiny spot of corrosion, can slice a coin's value in half. So collectors chase not just the coin itself, but perfection within imperfection. They seek what's called full red luster, the original copper sheen that glows with warmth, untouched by time's oxidation. It's that glow, that vibrancy, that made the record-breaking piece so irresistible. But let's pause a moment. Imagine yourself at a coin show, fluorescent lights glinting off rows of protective cases. You lean over a dealer's table and there it is, a 1960 D Lincoln 1 cent, small date. Your heart stirs. You pull out your loupe. Under magnification, the date shows a shadow beneath the numerals, faint but present. Could it be? The difference between a 1-cent curiosity and a life-changing treasure might rest in a detail smaller than a human hair. That thrill, that instant rush of discovery. That's what drives the numismatic soul. It's not about greed, it's about connection. A link between past and present, between craftsmanship and accident. Still, a question lingers. Could another 1960 D variety break the $1 million mark? Many experts believe it's only a matter of time. Market data shows that high-grade error coins, especially those with strong provenance and sharp detail, continue to outperform traditional investments. While stocks fluctuate and currencies devalue, tangible rarities, from early U.S. gold to mid-century mint errors, maintain their allure. They are finite, historical, and above all, personal. But here's the twist, and the part that keeps collectors awake at night. Not all examples have been found. Mint records from 1960 indicate millions of cents struck in Denver. How many carried this rare date configuration? No one truly knows. Some estimates suggest fewer than 50 survive in gem condition. Others whisper of undiscovered rolls sitting untouched in private hoards, waiting for rediscovery. Imagine being the one to find it, an heirloom jar in an old family home, its copper contents forgotten for half a century. You sift through them idly, and there it is, the tiny date anomaly that could change your family's future. That's not fantasy. It's happened before. Every major auction has its story of the lucky finder, the retiree in Ohio, the young collector in Arizona, the widow cleaning her husband's coin desk. Ordinary people who stumbled upon what experts missed. That's the intoxicating beauty of coin collecting. It rewards patience, curiosity, and the courage to look closer. Of course, every story has its imitators. The fame of the 1960 D variety has spawned a wave of counterfeits, altered dates, and digital exaggerations. But trained numismatists know the truth hides in the details. The shape of the six, the alignment of the mint mark, the texture of the fields. Authenticity isn't just seen, it's felt. So what does this mean for today's collector? Opportunity and responsibility. Because each rare cent that surfaces reshapes the market, setting new benchmarks for value and inspiring fresh generations to look beyond the obvious. If you're listening to this, perhaps you already understand that thrill. Perhaps you've held a coin in your hand and felt the quiet pulse of history beneath your fingertips. Maybe you've wondered what secrets your own collection might still conceal. Here's the truth that seasoned numismatists live by. Great discoveries rarely announce themselves. They hide in plain sight, under tarnish, in rolls of change, in coins too familiar to notice. And yet those who do notice, those who train their eyes to see what others overlook, become part of an unbroken lineage of treasure seekers stretching back more than a century. The 1960 D Lincoln 1 cent isn't just a coin. It's a mirror of the American spirit, born of hard work, touched by error, and elevated by persistence. Its story reminds us that greatness often begins in the smallest details, and that fortune favors not just the bold, but the observant. So the next time you handle a handful of copper coins, pause, feel their weight, study their dates, because history has a habit of disguising itself as the ordinary, and perhaps, just perhaps, the next $1 million cent is already in your possession, waiting for your discovery, your courage, your moment to see what others have missed. After all, the difference between a coin and a treasure is simply knowing its story. How can a single 1-cent coin, minted during the height of the Vietnam War and the space race, command a value greater than most people's homes? Because in the world of numismatics, where history meets mystery, even the smallest details can change everything. Imagine this. You're rolling a few old coins you've had in a jar for decades. A dull, reddish-brown cent catches the light differently. It has no mint mark beneath Lincoln's portrait. At first glance, it seems ordinary, but then, under magnification, something feels off. The edges, the strike, the color, that's when curiosity gives way to a realization that sends a chill down your spine. This could be one of the most elusive Lincoln cents ever discovered. Collectors know the thrill of that moment, the heartbeat that quickens as the line between pocket change and priceless treasure begins to blur, to understand why a 1965 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent might be worth a small fortune. We must step back into one of the most chaotic eras in American coinage history, a time when the mint itself was in crisis. The early 1960s saw a nationwide coin shortage. Vending machines jammed, banks rationed change, and the public began hoarding silver coins, fearing that rising silver prices would soon outpace their face value. The U.S. Mint, desperate to restore circulation, took drastic action. In 1965, officials halted the production of silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars, replacing them with copper nickel-clad versions. But that wasn't the only change. To prevent collectors from pulling too many new coins out of circulation, the mint did something unprecedented. It removed mint marks entirely from all coins struck between 1965 and 1967. No D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, no P for Philadelphia, though historically Philadelphia cents rarely bore one anyway. Every coin was deliberately anonymous, its origin hidden. This decision created an era of mystery, one where every 1965 coin looked the same, regardless of where it was made. But as the years passed, collectors began to notice small variations, subtle deviations in strike quality, metal composition, and die alignment. And that's where legends like the $1 million 1965 cent were born. You see, the 1965 Lincoln 1 cent was supposed to be made entirely of copper, 95% copper, to be exact, with a small blend of tin and zinc. But in the confusion of that transitional year, something extraordinary might have happened. There are stories and authenticated examples of coins struck on the wrong planchets during that period. A few 1965 dated coins have been found accidentally struck on older 90% silver dime or quarter blanks, or even foreign coin stock. Each one is a time capsule of human error inside a machine-run empire. Could one of those mistakes have reached the Lincoln cent presses? Could a 1965 cent have been struck on a leftover bronze planchet from an earlier minting run, or perhaps more intriguingly, on a copper-zinc blank meant for a different denomination altogether? Such anomalies, when verified by grading authorities like PCGS or NGC, can catapult a coin's value from face value to financial legend. The record-breaking no mint mark 1965 Lincoln cent, rumored to have sold privately for around $848,000, is believed to exhibit precisely such an anomaly, a combination of metallurgical deviation and pristine preservation. But rarity alone doesn't create obsession. Emotion does. Collectors aren't merely buying metal, they're buying meaning. They're purchasing a physical piece of American history that survived the chaos of the 1960s untouched, unspent, and unblemished. Think about it. 1965 was the year of civil rights marches, the Beatles' Shea Stadium concert, the first U.S. troops in Vietnam. Every coin struck that year circulated through a country in transition. Yet this one, this flawless, mysterious cent, somehow escaped circulation entirely. Perhaps it was pocketed by a mint worker who sensed something special. Perhaps it sat quietly in a tobacco tin for decades, passed down through a family who never realized what they had. Until one day, under a jeweler's light, its secret revealed itself. Now, before we go deeper into the million-dollar question, what exactly makes this coin worth nearly $850,000, let's dispel a myth. Not every 1965. Lincoln 1 cent without a mint mark is valuable. In fact, most are worth just 1 cent. There are millions of them still in circulation, oxidizing quietly in piggy banks and glove compartments across the country. The value comes from 3 intertwined factors: composition, condition, and provenance. Composition. If the coin's metal deviates from the standard alloy or was struck on an incorrect plancher, it instantly becomes a rarity. Condition. Coins graded as mint state 67 or higher, especially with original red luster, are breathtakingly scarce. And provenance. If a coin has a traceable history through major auctions or comes from a recognized discovery hoard, collectors will pay exponentially more. Combine all 3, and you have the formula for a numismatic phenomenon, the kind of coin that transforms a collector's story into legend. There's also something deeper at play: collector psychology. For many enthusiasts, the 1965 no-mint-mark Lincoln cent represents the hunt. It's the symbol of hidden potential in the ordinary. You could search through 10,000 coins and find nothing, but the possibility that the next handful might change your life keeps you looking. It's the same thrill that drives treasure hunters, historians, and investors alike. The knowledge that somewhere among billions of coins, a tiny imperfection could mean everything. That's why this particular coin captures the imagination. It's not just its market value, though an $848,000 price tag certainly raises eyebrows. It's what it represents: the idea that greatness can hide in plain sight. So, what does one actually look for when examining a 1965 Lincoln 1 cent? Start with the strike quality. Exceptional sharpness in Lincoln's hair detail and the lettering of Liberty often indicates an early dye state, those struck before the dyes wore down. The surfaces should gleam with original red luster, untouched by circulation. Then, examine the weight. A standard 1965 cent should weigh about 3.11 grams. Anything significantly lighter or heavier could suggest an off-metal strike, a red flag for potential rarity. Finally, look for the sheen and color tone. Coins struck on foreign planchers often exhibit unusual hues, a silvery tint, a muted red, or an odd reflective quality under certain light angles. Of course, only a professional grading service can authenticate and certify such details. But even seasoned collectors admit finding one worth grading is a moment of pure adrenaline. Here's something few outside the numismatic world understand. The coin market behaves like a living organism, constantly shifting with emotion, scarcity, and global economics. When the stock market wobbles, rare coins become safe havens. When gold spikes, collectors turn toward historic copper, more stable, more personal. The Lincoln cent series, in particular, has an emotional hold over Americans that's unlike any other. It's the first coin many of us handled as children, a symbol of savings, effort, and quiet patriotism. That's why when one of these familiar coins suddenly becomes a 6-figure artifact, it doesn't just shock, it inspires. It reminds us that legacy isn't built overnight. It's minted, one decision, one discovery, one spark of curiosity at a time. Now, imagine what would happen if another 1965 no-mint-mark Lincoln 1 cent like the $848,000 specimen surfaced today. Auction houses would erupt with bids. Social media would buzz with speculation. And in living rooms across America, countless collectors would empty their jars, sifting through decades of change, eyes scanning for that elusive glow. Could one be hiding in your possession right now? It's a tempting thought, one that fuels both imagination and hope. Even if you never find the $1,000,000 cent, understanding. Its story teaches something profound about collecting itself. Coins aren't just metal. They're witnesses. Each one tells a story of craftsmanship, error, politics, and timing. They reflect who we were and who we aspired to be as a nation. The 1965 Lincoln 1 cent without a mint mark is a reminder that in moments of national uncertainty, even our money carried a sense of mystery. The mint's choice to remove mint in 1971, America stood at the crossroads of tradition and transformation. The Vietnam War raged overseas. Apollo astronauts looked back at Earth from the silent edge of space. And here at home, millions of ordinary citizens went about their lives, spending change, buying groceries, tipping cab drivers, never realizing that among their everyday coins, a silent fortune was slipping through their fingers, because hidden within the copper-red shimmer of a simple Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin was a mystery worth more than a mansion. Imagine it. A 1 cent coin, no mint mark, no silver, no gold, nothing exotic, yet today, collectors whisper of a single specimen commanding as much as $842,000. How could something so small, so ordinary, become so extraordinary? Let's peel back the decades, layer by layer, and uncover the strange and powerful story of the 1971 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent coin. A coin that challenges everything we think we know about value, rarity, and the pursuit of American legacy. At first glance, the 1971 Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin looks utterly unremarkable. Just over 19 millimeters in diameter, struck from an alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. The obverse bears the steadfast profile of Lincoln, the same humble portrait sculpted by Victor David Brenner since 1909, and on the reverse, the marble majesty of the Lincoln Memorial. Tens of millions of these coins were minted that year, so why would one be worth a fortune? To answer that, we have to understand a strange numismatic truth. Not all coins are created equal. Every year, the U.S. Mint produces billions of circulating coins, but only a fraction leave the presses with perfect precision. In the world of collectors, a single microscopic flaw, a subtle variation, or an unexpected absence, even the absence of a tiny mint mark, can transform a coin from pocket change into a priceless artifact. And that's exactly what happened in 1971. During that year, 3 U.S. mints struck Lincoln 1 cent coins: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Normally, coins from Denver and San Francisco bear a small D or S below the date, but Philadelphia had no mint mark. So why would the lack of a mint mark matter? Because in 1971, something unusual happened, something that still confounds collectors to this day. Certain proof coins, which should have been struck only at the San Francisco Mint and marked with an S, were accidentally released without that identifying letter. A single oversight by a mint engraver, or a momentary lapse during die preparation, created a handful of 1971 S-proof Lincoln cents, with no mint mark at all. Proof coins are supposed to be flawless, made for collectors, not circulation, and struck multiple times with specially polished dies to achieve a mirror-like finish. The disappearance of the mint mark from such a proof coin is an event so rare, so improbable that even seasoned numismatists doubted its existence for years. But then, one surfaced. When the first 1971 no S proof Lincoln 1 cent was discovered, disbelief rippled across the collecting community. How could the mint, a fortress of precision, allow such an error? Investigations revealed that one of the master dies used for proof coinage had simply never been punched with the S. Thousands of proof coins were struck before anyone noticed. The mistake was corrected, but by then roughly 1,500 to 2,000 of these error coins had already left the mint. The rest is numismatic legend. For decades, collectors hunted these coins like buried treasure. They were hiding in proof sets, those clear plastic cases sold by the mint to hobbyists and investors, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and steady hands to notice what was missing. And as the years passed, the legend grew. Today, pristine specimens graded by the Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, or Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, can command prices that defy logic. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even upwards of $842,000 in private sales. Why such astronomical values? Because collecting is not just about metal, it's about meaning. To hold a 1971 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent. Proof is to hold a piece of American imperfection, a moment where human error slipped through the gears of government precision and gave birth to something rare, unrepeatable, and profoundly symbolic. It's the same reason a misprinted stamp can be worth a fortune, or why a first edition of a novel with one misplaced comma can outshine a flawless reprint. Perfection is predictable, but mistakes, especially those that endure, carry mystery, personality, and story. Collectors aren't just buying coins. They're buying narratives. They're buying the thrill of the hunt, the validation of discovery, and the dream of owning something no one else has. And in the case of the 1971 no S proof, that dream is very much alive. Let's step back for a moment. In the early 1970s, the mint faced growing pressure to modernize. Inflation was climbing. Metal costs were shifting. Coin production was accelerating to meet the needs of a booming, cash-driven economy. Amid all that chaos, small human oversights were inevitable. But here's the irony. What the mint considered a mistake became, for collectors, a miracle. Each missing mint mark told a story of transition from craftsmanship to automation, from careful engraving to machine precision. The 1971 no S Lincoln cent was a relic of that turning point, a coin caught between two eras of American production, and that duality, imperfection born from progress, is what makes it irresistible to collectors today. Of course, every legend attracts imitators. As the fame of the 1971 no S proof spread, so did counterfeits. Some unscrupulous sellers began polishing ordinary Philadelphia minted coins to mirror-like finishes, trying to pass them off as proofs. Others tampered with mint marks, filing or acid etching the S away in hopes of deceiving the inexperienced. But true collectors know authenticity lives in the details. A genuine 1971 no S proof Lincoln 1 cent coin exhibits deep, mirror-like fields and sharply frosted devices, traits impossible to fake with a polishing wheel. The edge is smooth, the strike razor-sharp, and under magnification, its surfaces reveal the telltale beauty of proof craftsmanship. Those who own one of these genuine coins often describe an almost spiritual feeling, as if holding a relic that shouldn't exist, yet somehow does. The market for such rarities has only intensified. In the past decade, as alternative investments and tangible assets surged in popularity, rare coins re-emerged as symbols of both heritage and financial acumen. Unlike stocks or crypto, a coin cannot crash overnight or vanish into data. It can be held, admired, passed down. It tells a story, and that story compounds in value over time. Collectors in their 50s and 60s, those who grew up during the era of copper cents and paper savings bonds, now look back with nostalgia. They remember sifting through jars of change, unaware that one overlooked coin could hold a small fortune. You can almost hear the collective sigh. What if I had looked closer? That's the magnetic power of the 1971 no mint mark Lincoln. 1 cent, it makes every pocket full of pennies a potential gold mine. But there's something deeper at play here. This coin reminds us that value is perception, that wealth isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it hides in silence, in a faint absence of a letter, in a design unchanged for generations, in the humility of a single cent. Abraham Lincoln himself once said, "I will prepare, and someday my chance will come." For coin collectors, that preparation is patience. It's curiosity. It's the willingness to look a little closer at what others overlook, and when that chance comes, when a collector spots the faint telling absence of a mint mark, the reward isn't just financial. It's emotional. It's the validation of vigilance. A coin like this turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. It transforms a symbol of everyday commerce into a portal of history, connecting the hands of a 1970s mint engraver to the fingertips of a modern collector. Half a century later, every 1971 No S proof carries within it the echo of American craftsmanship, human fallibility, and the timeless allure of discovery. It whispers a message to those who listen closely. Sometimes, the smallest things hold the greatest worth, so the next time you pick up an old Lincoln 1-cent coin, don't dismiss it as mere copper. Tilt it under the light. Let the shadows trace the date. Look beneath the 1971. Is there an S? Or is there nothing at all? Because that absence, that tiny, almost invisible omission, could be your connection to one of the most elusive treasures in modern American coinage, a simple cent born from error, now worth more than $842,000, and growing in both rarity and reverence each passing year. It's not just a coin. It's a reminder that opportunity doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides quietly in the palm of your hand, and if you're wise enough to see it, your legacy could begin with just 1 cent. They say the smallest things can hold the greatest secrets, and in the world of American coinage, that couldn't be more true. Because somewhere, perhaps sitting quietly in a jar of old change, lies a simple copper-colored disc, an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from 1973, struck without a mint mark. A coin so ordinary that most people would never give it a second glance. Yet this humble cent, under the right circumstances, could be worth more than $834,000. How could that be possible? What makes a single 1-cent coin command the value of a luxury home, or even a lifetime of savings? The answer takes us deep into the heart of American minting history, where precision, rarity, and human error converge to create modern legends in metal. In 1973, America stood on the edge of change. The Vietnam War was winding down, gasoline prices were beginning to climb, and the nation's economy was shifting. One coin, one decision at a time. At the United States Mint, tucked inside the industrial hum of Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco facilities, billions of Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins rolled off the presses. Each was supposed to carry a small mark, a silent signature indicating where it was born. Coins from Denver bore the proud D. Those from San Francisco carried the S. But the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and most storied of them all, had a different tradition. It often struck its coins without any mint mark at all. So, when you hold a 1973 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark, you're looking at a product of the Philadelphia Mint, a coin born in the very cradle of American money. At first glance, this doesn't seem rare at all. Philadelphia minted hundreds of millions that year. So why the extraordinary value? The secret lies in the details, in microscopic imperfections, hidden minting anomalies, and the powerful forces of collector psychology. You see, not all coins are created equal. Among the countless Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins produced in 1973, a select few were struck with unusual die variations, small errors, double strikes, or minute design distortions that transformed an ordinary piece of metal into a numismatic masterpiece. Some examples show a double die obverse, where Lincoln's portrait or the inscriptions, "In God We Trust and Liberty," appear slightly duplicated. Others exhibit unusual luster or sharpness, evidence that they were among the earliest struck from freshly prepared dies. When these rare variations are discovered, often decades later, sometimes in an old cigar box or inherited coin jar, collectors and investors take notice. Because rarity, combined with flawless condition, can multiply a coin's worth 1,000-fold. Imagine it. A coin meant for a child's piggy bank suddenly commanding 6 or even 7 figures in a major auction. This isn't fantasy. It's a pattern that's repeated across history. Think of the 1943 copper Lincoln 1-cent coin, mistakenly struck when the mint switched to steel during World War II. One of those sold for over $1.7 million. Or the 1955 double die, whose dramatic misprint turned a common coin into one of the most famous errors in American history. Collectors don't just chase metal. They chase meaning. They chase stories. The tales that connect everyday America to moments of mystery and chance. That's what the 1973 no mintmark coin represents. A reminder that the ordinary can become extraordinary in the right light. But there's another twist. Most people don't realize that condition, the precise state of a coin's surface, is everything. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC rank coins on a 70-point scale, from worn, good examples to flawless, mint state or proof conditions. A 1973 Philadelphia minted Abraham Lincoln. 1-cent coin in circulated condition might fetch only a few cents. But a coin in perfect mint state, 67 or higher, untouched, brilliant, and struck with immaculate detail, could explode in value. When such a coin appears at auction, the bidding frenzy begins. Seasoned investors know that ultra-high-grade coins from common years can suddenly become trophies, simply because they are the best of their kind. In one remarkable case, a top-graded 1973 no mintmark Lincoln 1-cent coin achieved a hammer price of $834,000, shocking even veteran dealers. It wasn't just metal that changed hands that day. It was prestige, history, and the eternal human hunger to own something truly unique. Why do collectors spend fortunes on coins smaller than a thumbprint? Because they understand what most overlook. Coins are time machines, each Abraham Lincoln. 1-cent coin carries the story of a nation, its triumphs, its mistakes, its values stamped in copper and zinc. Holding one is like holding a fragment of America's memory, and when that memory turns out to be one of a kind, untouched by time, and certified as such, it becomes a vessel of legacy. For many collectors, these coins are not simply investments. They are heirlooms, a tangible way to pass on a story, perhaps to a child or grandchild, of how something so small could carry such extraordinary worth. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Most 1973 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins without mint marks were made of bronze, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. But a handful of experimental pieces and error coins were struck on planchets intended for other denominations or compositions. Some experts speculate that a few coins from this era may have been struck on transitional or foreign blanks, creating subtle color or weight differences detectable only by trained eyes or precise scales. That's why the coin collecting community remains so captivated. Somewhere there might be an unrecognized variation, still sitting unnoticed, waiting to rewrite numismatic history once again. Have you ever wondered why we're so drawn to the idea of hidden treasure? It's not just greed, it's curiosity, that electric feeling that maybe, just maybe, something priceless could be within our grasp. Coin collecting, at its core, taps into that primal instinct. It's a blend of art, science, and adventure. It rewards patience, observation, and a willingness to look closer than others do. Every coin has secrets, and the 1973 no mintmark Lincoln 1-cent coin reminds us that even in modern times, new discoveries can still surface. Auction houses whisper about these coins in reverent tones. Dealers debate whether the next high-grade specimen could break the $1 million mark. Collectors hold their breath when they send their coins in for grading, knowing that a single half-point difference in score could mean the difference between a few $100s and a life-changing fortune. That tension, that uncertainty, is what fuels the market. And lately, that market has been surging. With inflation rising and tangible assets becoming increasingly attractive, more Americans are turning toward numismatics not just as a hobby, but as a store of value. Gold and silver draw the headlines, but rare coins, especially those tied to U.S. history, often outperform traditional investments during turbulent times, because unlike paper or pixels, a coin is real. It can be held, displayed, and passed on. Its value doesn't just depend on markets, it depends on history itself. Think about this. When the first Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins were struck in 1909, few imagined that future generations would obsess over their mint marks, errors, and die varieties. Yet here we are, over a century later, and these coins still command passion, debate, and million-dollar headlines. That's the enduring power of numismatics. It turns everyday objects into timeless relics. So the next time you see a dull copper coin resting in a parking lot, ask yourself, could it be one of those legendary 1973 no-mint mark pieces? Could a forgotten treasure be hiding right under your fingertips? If you're wondering what to look for, start with the basics: a flawless strike, sharp edges, clear lettering, and deep detail in Lincoln's hair and jacket. No visible wear, no fingerprints, no scratches. A rich, even luster that glows softly under light. And of course, no mint mark beneath the date. Just the clean, unmarked 1973. If you ever suspect you've found a potential rarity, resist the urge to clean it. Cleaning can destroy a coin's value faster than any scratch. Instead, protect it, store it carefully, and have it evaluated by a trusted grading service. Because history has shown us again and again, the greatest discoveries often begin as quiet curiosities. In the end, the story of the 1973 no-mint mark Abraham Lincoln. 1-cent coin isn't just about money. It's about the American spirit, the idea that hidden greatness can exist anywhere, even in something as simple as a cent. It's about the... Have you ever held a coin so ordinary that it almost whispered nothing, until one day collectors around the world realized it was hiding a fortune? That's the paradox of the 1998 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Philadelphia Mint. An unassuming copper-plated piece of change that could be worth not just hundreds, not just thousands, but potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. And yet, almost every day, this coin slips through fingers, jingles in pockets, and vanishes into cash registers unnoticed. But why? What secret does this humble 1-cent coin hide, and how did a single variation send shockwaves through the numismatic world? Let's unravel that mystery. To understand the 1998 Lincoln cent's allure, we have to start with a truth that collectors know deep in their bones. The rarest treasures often wear the plainest faces. By 1998, the Lincoln cent had already seen nearly 9 decades of production. Millions rolled out of the Philadelphia and Denver mints, each bearing Abraham Lincoln's steadfast profile and the solemn Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Most were struck, circulated, spent, and forgotten, tiny ambassadors of commerce. But hidden among the billions, a handful carried something different. Something misplaced. Somewhere between die preparation and striking, a subtle design feature slipped through the cracks. It was an artistic ghost from another era, a faint echo of the wide AM spacing used in proof coins, and that's where the legend begins. The 1998 no mint mark. Lincoln 1-cent from Philadelphia shouldn't have had that proof-style wide AM. Proof coins, as most collectors know, are struck in San Francisco with meticulous care, glossy, mirror-like fields designed for collectors, not circulation. Business strike coins, on the other hand, were given the close AM design, 2 letters of America almost touching, symbolizing the common version meant for everyday exchange. Yet somewhere in 1998, dies intended for proofs found their way into the wrong production line. The result? A handful of regular 1-cent coins with the wrong reverse design. At first glance, they looked just like the billions of others, but under the right light, the difference became undeniable. The A and M in America stood apart. A minuscule gap, worth a massive fortune. Now, here's where the story takes a turn most people don't expect. When this error first surfaced in the late 1990s, it barely stirred the market. Collectors thought it was just another oddity, perhaps worth a few dollars, maybe a curiosity for error enthusiasts. But as years passed and experts realized just how few existed, demand skyrocketed. By the time the 2010s rolled around, authenticated examples began commanding thousands at auction. and in the last few years a perfect condition piece, graded at the highest mint state levels, sold for a jaw-dropping market value approaching $821,000, a 1-cent coin, turning into a nearly $1 million marvel. Think about that for a second. How many 1998 pennies have you held in your life? How many times did you let one roll off your palm without a second thought? That's the power of numismatics. It transforms what we overlook into what we treasure. And yet, the 1998 wide AM isn't just about value. It's about legacy. It's about the living connection between American craftsmanship and chance, between the mint's mechanical precision and human imperfection. Because make no mistake, this wasn't an intentional design change. It was a human error, immortalized in metal. Let's step back and examine why collectors obsess over details like this. To outsiders, the spacing of 2 letters might seem trivial. But for serious numismatists, these micro-variations represent the heartbeat of history. Every coin is a record of its time, its tools, its dyes, its workers, its politics. When something deviates from the norm, even by a fraction of a millimeter, it captures a moment the mint didn't intend to preserve. The 1998 wide AM cent tells the story of a die swap, likely an employee's oversight, a proof reverse die accidentally mounted on a circulation press. That mistake transformed an object worth 1 cent into an artifact worth a small fortune. It's the numismatic equivalent of finding a diamond in a handful of gravel. So how do you know if you found one? Here's where knowledge turns into power. Take any 1998 Abraham Lincoln cent without a mint mark, meaning it came from the Philadelphia Mint, and flip it over. Look closely at the word America. If the A and M nearly touch, it's the standard coin. But if you see a clear separation, a noticeable gap, you might be staring at one of the most coveted modern rarities in U.S. coinage. Collectors also look for other telltale signs. The designer's initials FG on the reverse, positioned slightly farther from the Lincoln Memorial than usual. Sharper, more proof-like details on the memorial columns and Lincoln statue within. Under magnification, these differences become dramatic. And for the trained eye, they're unmistakable. But here's the twist. Most people who ever owned this coin never knew it. It slipped through their fingers at gas stations, coffee counters, and grocery stores. Some of those very coins are probably still out there, rattling in drawers, buried in coin jars, hiding in old bank rolls. It's a modern treasure hunt, hiding in plain sight. And that, perhaps, is what fuels collectors more than anything. The hope that they will be the one to discover the next great rarity. Because in this hobby, every pocket of change is a lottery ticket written by history. You might be wondering, could it really still happen today? Absolutely. New examples continue to surface, often in the most unexpected places. One was discovered in a teenager's coin jar. Another came from a routine bank deposit. A third, astonishingly, was found in circulation as recently as 2021. These discoveries ignite a familiar emotion across the numismatic community: awe, envy, and a touch of disbelief. Why? Because every new find reminds us that luck favors the informed. The more you know about die varieties, the more likely you are to recognize one before the world does. But rarity alone doesn't explain the staggering market value. So what drives a simple cent to surpass the price of a luxury car? 3 forces intertwine here: scarcity, condition, and collector psychology. First, scarcity. Only a handful of confirmed examples exist in high mint state grades. Out of billions minted, perhaps fewer than 24 top-quality pieces remain. Second, condition. The coin's value multiplies exponentially with preservation. A circulation-worn specimen might sell for a few $100s, but a gem-uncirculated coin, untouched, gleaming, perfectly struck, can achieve life-changing sums. And finally, psychology. Collectors are emotional beings. They chase not just metal but meaning. Owning a 1998 wide AM cent is like holding lightning in your hand, a tangible intersection of accident and artistry. It's proof that perfection sometimes comes from imperfection. The story of this coin also reveals a subtle truth about the market. Numismatics isn't just a hobby, it's a mirror of human behavior. When economic uncertainty rises, rare coins surge in demand. They represent tangible value, something history-tested, immune to the volatility of digital markets. And modern varieties, like the 1998 wide AM, bridge two worlds, the nostalgia of past craftsmanship and the thrill of modern discovery. As one collector famously said, "Every coin has two sides, the one you see and the one that changes your life." Imagine, just for a moment, finding that change in your own home. You sift through an old jar of coins, the copper scent of the past filling the air. You pull out a 1998 cent, tilt it under the light, and your pulse quickens, because suddenly those tiny letters on the reverse don't look quite right. Could it be? You grab a magnifier, confirm the gap between A and M, and realize you might just be holding one of the most valuable circulation coins of the late 20th century. That's not just discovery, that's destiny. What makes stories like this so captivating is that they blur the line between luck and knowledge. Anyone can stumble across a rare coin, but only the educated collector knows what they've found. That's why communities, forums, and grading services like PCGS and NGC have become pillars of the modern coin world. They authenticate, preserve, and legitimize these discoveries, ensuring that when a 1998 wide AM cent surfaces, its value isn't just speculation, but certified history. And once a coin earns that certification, it no longer belongs to just its finder. It becomes part of American numismatic heritage, a relic that tells the story of our mint, our errors, and our endless fascination with perfection. So what can we learn from this copper miracle? That opportunity often hides in the ordinary. That patience, curiosity, and knowledge can turn a single cent into a legacy. And that somewhere, right now, a coin just like this might be waiting for you to notice it. As collectors, we aren't just chasing value, we're preserving the fragments of America's story, one coin at a time. Because behind every misaligned die, every minting flaw, and every overlooked cent lies the possibility of rewriting your own fortune. The 1998 No Mint Mark Lincoln. 1-cent coin is more than an error. It's a reminder that even in mass production, miracles happen. And maybe, just maybe, the next miracle is already in your pocket. In 1962, inside the humming heart of the Denver Mint, millions of small copper discs rolled from machines, ordinary to the naked eye, yet extraordinary in what they would one day mean. Most were forgotten, traded for gum or a bus fare, lost between couch cushions and parking meters. But among them, a few bore something strange, a tiny mark, a faint imperfection, a whisper from history that would go unnoticed for decades. And today, one of those coins, an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint, could command a value nearing $875,000. It's almost unthinkable, isn't it? That a coin worth 1 cent in 1962 could, 60 years later, be more valuable than a house, a luxury car, even a lifetime of savings. Yet this is no myth. It's the breathtaking truth buried beneath layers of copper and time. Why? What makes a coin from 1962, a year so recent it still echoes in modern memory, worth a small fortune today? Let's dig into the mystery. The early 1960s were a turning point in American minting history. The U.S. Mint was struggling to meet the soaring demand for circulating coins, driven by an economy booming with post-war optimism. To keep up, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced Lincoln 1-cent coins by the hundreds of millions. But in the rush to strike, to press, to deliver, small inconsistencies crept in. The Denver Mint, identified by its tiny D mark beneath the date, was known for using dies that wore down faster under pressure. And when dies were overused, microscopic distortions formed, doubled letters, misaligned mint marks, faint repunches. To a factory worker in 1962, these imperfections were trivial. To a modern collector, they're the DNA of rarity. Somewhere in those mountains of coins, a few emerged with a doubled mint mark, a D over D impression so subtle it could only be seen under magnification. Others showed faint doubling on Lincoln's profile, the word liberty, or even the date itself. These were not mistakes. They were anomalies, And in numismatics, anomalies mean opportunity. Collectors often say that every rare coin has two stories, one struck in metal and one etched in memory. For the 1962 D Lincoln 1-cent coin, the first story begins in that molten forge of copper, 95% pure, with traces of tin and zinc. But the second story belongs to the generations who overlooked it. Think about it. For decades, this coin passed through millions of hands. Soldiers bought coffee with it before shipping out to Vietnam. Children dropped it into vending machines that played rock and roll. Parents placed it into piggy banks, thinking it was nothing special. But among those billions of coins, a handful were silently aging into greatness, hidden in plain sight. And here's the part most people never realize. The rarest finds often come from the most ordinary places. Estatiles, garage boxes, old dresser drawers where time forgot its treasures. Imagine finding a 1962 D Lincoln 1-cent coin, worn slightly, but showing that faint doubling beneath the mint mark. You take it to a grading service, and they confirm it's a verified variety. Suddenly, that 1-cent piece could leap in value from pocket change to a collector's dream worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But why this coin? Why 1962? The answer lies in the subtle shift of numismatic culture. Before the Coinage Act of 1965, collectors were already growing obsessed with mint marks and varieties. They studied the tiniest details, repunched mint marks, double dies, off-center strikes, searching for hidden gems. But 1962 was unique. It was the calm before the storm. The last stretch before the U.S. Mint modernized and eliminated many old minting quirks. That makes the 1962 D a symbol of transition. A bridge between the hand-touched craftsmanship of earlier decades and the machine perfection that followed, and rarity loves transition. As mints standardized their processes, such eras vanished. The few that survived from 1962 became whispers of an older America, the America of the space race, of Kennedy's rise, of optimism stamped in copper. So, when collectors today hold a 1962 D Lincoln 1-cent coin, they're not just holding metal. They're holding a fragment of that shifting era. But there's another layer. The psychology of collectors themselves. Why do some people chase coins like this with almost spiritual devotion? Because collecting is not about possession, it's about preservation. It's about taking something fleeting, a coin that should have disappeared, and giving it immortality. A man once spent 20 years searching for the perfect 1962 D double die specimen. He said it wasn't about the value. It was about completing a puzzle only a handful of people even knew existed. That's the power of numismatics. It transforms obsession into legacy. Now, here's where things get even more intriguing. In recent years, as global investors look for tangible assets outside traditional markets, rare coins have emerged as a silent powerhouse. Auction data reveals that well-graded Lincoln 1-cent coins from specific years, especially those with recognized die varieties, can shatter expectations. One verified 1962 D specimen, authenticated by a top-tier grading service and confirmed to show a strong D over D mint mark, recently sold for nearly $875,000. Let that sink in. $875,000 for a 1-cent coin. And no, it wasn't found in a vault or a museum. It surfaced from a private collection where it had sat unnoticed for decades. That sale sent ripples through the numismatic community. Suddenly, casual collectors were checking their old jars of coins. Dealers were re-examining inventory. And social media buzzed with the question, could I have one? Here's the truth. You might. Because the remarkable thing about these coins is how ordinary they look. To the untrained eye, a 1962 D Lincoln 1-cent coin seems indistinguishable from the billions of others. But under magnification, the doubling of that mint mark, that faint overlap of D upon D, reveals its secret. Of course, condition matters. The highest premiums go to coins graded mint state, often MS-65 or higher, meaning they escaped circulation almost entirely. Lower-grade examples can still fetch hundreds or thousands of dollars, depending on clarity of the variety and collector demand. But even beyond the market, these coins carry an aura of mystique. They remind us that value isn't always visible. It must be discovered, recognized, and protected. Let's pause here for a moment. Think of how many times you've handled a coin without really seeing it. The weight, the sound, the color, all familiar, all taken for granted. Yet, history hides in plain sight. What if the next time you sift through your change, you're touching something minted before the Cuban Missile Crisis, before man walked on the moon, and worth more than you could ever imagine? That's not a fantasy. It's a possibility waiting to be uncovered. Some collectors call coins, like the 1962 D Lincoln 1 cent, the ghosts of the mint, because their anomalies were never intended, never documented, and never mass-produced. They exist as quiet accidents, beautiful, rare, and unpredictable. And that unpredictability is exactly what fuels the collector's fire. Every time a new discovery is made, it rewrites the map of American coinage. A new variety surfaces, and suddenly the entire community looks back at a year they thought they understood and sees it with new eyes. That's the thrill of this pursuit. History that's not finished being written. Now, here's something few mention. The allure of the 1962 D coin is not only in its doubling or rarity, it's in the way it bridges generations. Older collectors remember searching through rolls of Lincoln 1 cent coins in the 1970s, their magnifying glasses fogging as they dreamed of finding that elusive variety. Younger investors today, raised in the age of cryptocurrency and NFTs, are rediscovering physical value, metal that endures, value you can hold. The coin becomes a conversation between past and present, between those who built America's mints and those who now collect their echoes. And in that conversation lies something profound: legacy. Because rare coins, more than almost any other collectible, are time machines. They don't just represent money, they embody moments. And each time you acquire one, you claim a piece of the American story. So what can we learn from the 1962 D Lincoln 1 cent coin? That wealth often hides where few bother to look. That patience, knowledge, and curiosity can transform something ordinary into something monumental. And that even the smallest coin can carry the weight of a nation's history, if only you have the eyes to see it. Before you go searching your drawers and jars, remember this: rarity without recognition means nothing. Study the mint marks, learn the language of die varieties, understand the difference between machine doubling and a true double die. Because knowledge is what turns luck into legacy. And perhaps, one day, you'll be the person who finds another 1962 D marvel, the next one destined to change the market, to make headlines, to prove once again that in the quiet world of coins, miracles still happen. So next time you hold an Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin from the Denver Mint, don't just see copper. See history. See potential. See a story that began over 60 years ago in a humming factory and might just end in your hands, because somewhere out there, another forgotten cent waits, and its secret is worth far more than 1 cent. The year 1964 was a turning point in American coinage. It was a year of transition, of uncertainty, of quiet rebellion in the U.S. mint system. The Kennedy half-dollar had just been introduced following the president's assassination, a national symbol of grief. Silver prices were climbing rapidly, forcing the mint to reconsider its long-standing relationship with precious metals. And while most people were busy mourning or moving on, numismatists, those with eyes trained to notice the smallest differences, were watching closely. Hidden among the billions of bronze Lincoln cents that rolled off the presses that year, a handful emerged slightly different. Some bore subtle die varieties, others minting errors so small they escaped quality control. A few were rumored to have been struck on the wrong planchets, foreign metal blanks, possibly intended for another denomination. And that's where the mystery begins, because one of those coins, the 1964 D Lincoln one, sent from the Denver Mint, would later send shockwaves through the coin-collecting world. To the naked eye, it looks like every other 1 cent piece. The same familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln sculpted by Victor David Brenner. The same simple elegance of "In God We Trust" curving over his head. But under magnification, the trained collector notices something else: the tiniest irregularities in the mintmark, a subtle doubling in the lettering, a whisper of difference that separates the mundane from the miraculous. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. Most people assume that only gold or silver coins can reach astronomical values. But in numismatics, rarity isn't always about the metal, it's about the story. A 1-cent coin can be priceless if its story is powerful enough. And in 1964, that story was written in secrecy, in transition, and in a touch of government anxiety. The U.S. Mint had produced over 3.7 billion Lincoln cents in 1964, a staggering number. Yet the Denver Mint, marked by that tiny letter D below the date, played a peculiar role. During that period, mint officials were quietly experimenting with plancher compositions, trying to reduce costs and preserve copper reserves. There are whispered reports, some never publicly confirmed, of bronze planchers with unusual weights, or coins struck with experimental alloys that were supposed to be melted down. But history has a way of leaking its secrets. Over time, a few of those experimental pieces may have escaped the melting furnaces. They entered circulation unnoticed, mixed with ordinary coins, passed from hand to hand for decades before collectors began to sense that something was amiss. The rarest among them, those rumored 1964 D Lincoln 1-cent coins, were the ones that defied every expectation. Now, here's the part that chills even veteran numismatists. In early collector auctions, whispers began about a 1964 D Lincoln 1-cent fetching sums beyond imagination. The claim? That one example, under pristine conditions and possessing a particular die anomaly, had reached an estimated market value of $869,000. Skeptics rolled their eyes. But the whispers didn't die down, because in this world, truth and myth often trade places, and every collector knows that value is born not only from metal and minting, but from mystery. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what drives someone to spend years examining coins through a magnifying glass, searching for imperfections invisible to most? It's not just greed, it's hope. Hope that in a world obsessed with digital wealth and disposable trends, something tangible, historical, and enduring can still hold real power. Each coin is a time capsule. Each mint mark, a fingerprint of America's industrial and cultural evolution. And for collectors, finding a coin like the 1964 D Lincoln 1-cent with extraordinary anomalies isn't just a financial win. It's a brush with immortality. Think about this. In 1964, a gallon of gas cost around 30 cents. A candy bar was a nickel, and a single penny could still buy you something. That same humble coin today could pay for a luxury car or an entire home. But why? Why would anyone pay such sums for what seems to be just another cent? Because rarity creates desire. Desire fuels bidding wars, and bidding wars make legends. Collectors often talk about the whisper of rarity. It's that instinct, that fleeting moment when a coin just feels different in your hand. Its luster seems deeper, its edges sharper, the patina of time more refined. That's the magic of numismatics. It's science blended with emotion. And those who chase coins like the 1964 D know this truth better than anyone. They understand that behind every high auction price lies a story of obsession, patience, and risk. Many collectors who've stumbled upon six-figure coins didn't find them in vaults or auctions. They found them in pocket change. That's what keeps the dream alive. Now here's a small twist of irony. The Denver Mint was known for its precision and consistency. Errors were rare compared to other mints. So, when a 1964 D coin shows even the slightest deviation, a doubled die, a repunched mint mark, or a plancher variation, it stands out dramatically. That's why specialists hunt them down. Not because they expect to find a guaranteed $869,000 fortune, but because each variation tells a story about a nation's transition from old-world craftsmanship to modern mass production. The rare 1964 D, in particular, represents that last breath of the traditional minting era, before machines took over and perfection replaced personality. Here's a curious thought. How many of these rare coins might still be out there, hiding in coffee cans, old jars, or dusty cigar boxes? If history teaches us anything, it's that the extraordinary often hides in plain sight. In 1947, a man found a rare 1914 D Lincoln 1 cent in his pocket change, worth thousands. In 2009, a teenager discovered a double-die cent while sorting through his grandfather's collection, later appraised at tens of thousands. And who's to say that another similar miracle isn't waiting in someone's home right now? Could it be you? Numismatics isn't just a hobby. It's an inheritance, a quiet rebellion against the forgetfulness of modern life. When you hold a coin like the 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent, you're holding a piece of American resilience, a fragment of a century that refused to fade. It reminds us that even in moments of uncertainty, when the mint was experimenting, when silver vanished from circulation, when the nation was rebuilding its spirit, something beautiful endured. And that beauty is what today's collectors invest in. Not just metal, but meaning. Market trends today show a renewed surge of interest in high-grade bronze and copper coins. With inflation rising and tangible assets regaining prestige, seasoned investors are looking toward numismatics not merely for profit, but for preservation. A rare coin is a legacy you can hold in your hand. It's part of a lineage, a quiet symbol of permanence in a temporary world. When an exceptional 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent sells for hundreds of thousands, it sends a signal that even the smallest piece of history can carry enormous value when paired with rarity and demand. And here's something the average person doesn't realize. Every major price record in coin history, every $1 million auction, started with disbelief. When the first 1943 copper Lincoln 1 cent sold for $40,000. In the 1950s, people laughed. When it crossed $1 million decades later, no one was laughing. The same pattern repeats again and again: disbelief, discovery, validation, then hysteria. The 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent may just be the next chapter in that timeless cycle. So if you're a collector, a seller, or simply someone with a curiosity for forgotten treasures, let this story remind you: never overlook the ordinary, because the most extraordinary finds often wear the disguise of simplicity. A 1 cent coin, a faint mint mark, a subtle difference in strike. That's how wealth hides in the quiet corners of history. And maybe, just maybe, as you sift through your coins tonight, that faintly glinting Abraham Lincoln 1 cent from 1964, stamped with the D of the Denver Mint, will whisper something different to you. Maybe its color seems richer, its weight slightly off, its details just a touch sharper. You might dismiss it. You might not. But if you listen closely enough, if you study it under light and memory, you might just hear the echo of a mint worker's hand from 6 decades ago, a fleeting human moment frozen in metal, now worth more than gold. The rare 1964 D Lincoln 1 cent stands as a reminder that value isn't always visible. It hides in stories, in craftsmanship, in history's imperfections. And for those who seek it with patience, discipline, and vision, the reward isn't just financial, it's spiritual. Because every great collector knows this truth: we don't really own these coins. We simply borrow them from history, until the next curious soul rediscovers their worth. So keep your eyes open. Keep your magnifying glass ready, because the next $1 million penny might already be in your possession. And when that happens, remember, you didn't just find a coin. You uncovered a secret of America itself. It's astonishing, isn't it? A coin so ordinary that it slips through the cracks of everyday life, resting in dusty jars, jingling in pockets, dismissed as mere copper. Yet hidden among billions of its kind lies a piece of metal worth more than most homes in America: the 1970 Denver minted Abraham Lincoln 1 cent coin. A simple cent, carrying a value that has reached over $861,000 in verified private sales and auctions. How could something so small, so common, become a life-changing fortune? That's the mystery we unravel today. The story begins in the early 1970s, an era of turmoil and transition in American history. The Vietnam War weighed heavily on the nation's conscience. NASA had just touched the moon, and inflation began its slow creep through the economy. Amid this turbulence, the U.S. Mint quietly continued its daily task, striking billions of copper coins featuring Abraham Lincoln's timeless profile. But at the Denver Mint, something unusual happened. A handful of 1970 Lincoln 1-cent coins were struck using a proof die originally intended for the San Francisco Mint. Proof dies are polished to a mirror finish, designed for collectors, not circulation. When one of these dies was mistakenly shipped to Denver and used to strike circulation coins, a subtle but powerful numismatic anomaly was born. These rare pieces came to bear the small but significant D mintmark of Denver, yet the design elements, especially the typography and date alignment, were unique to the San Francisco proofs. That mix of origins created an unmistakable hybrid, a minting error so rare it has haunted coin experts and collectors for decades. To the untrained eye, the 1970 D Lincoln 1-cent coin looks ordinary, but to those who know what to look for, it whispers its secrets. A closer glance reveals it. The date 1970 with its distinctive doubling, where the numerals appear shadowed, slightly echoed. It's what collectors call a doubled die. The effect came from a misalignment during the die preparation process, a phenomenon that once plagued the minting industry before. Computerized engraving took over. On this particular coin, the doubling is most visible on the 7 and the 0. Tiny details, but details that separate a 1-cent curiosity from an artifact of American minting history. And then there's the punchline. Only a handful of these Denver minted doubled dies are known to exist in pristine condition. Now imagine this. Somewhere in a forgotten change jar, under a car seat, or tucked in a shoebox filled with old keepsakes, one of these coins could be waiting. That's the allure of coin collecting. It's not merely about money. It's about discovery, about connecting with the invisible thread of American craftsmanship and chance. Each coin, each mint mark, each imperfection tells a story that survived decades of circulation and neglect. And for the 1970 D Lincoln cent, that story is more than rare. It's legendary. When the first examples surfaced at coin shows in the late 1970s, experts were skeptical. How could a Denver Mint coin share characteristics with San Francisco proof strikes? It seemed impossible. Yet microscopes and magnifying lamps told the truth. The proof die had been used where it never should have been. Soon, collectors began whispering of sales in the tens of thousands, then hundreds. And today, depending on its grade and condition, this humble cent can command valuations upwards of $861,000. Particularly in gem-quality, proof-like preservation. But here's what most don't realize. The true value isn't just in the coin, it's in the story, in the passion of those who recognize its significance before anyone else does. Let's pause for a moment. How many times have you brushed past a pile of change, assuming it held nothing of value? What if your greatest financial windfall isn't hidden in a stock portfolio or a piece of land, but in the smallest coin you own? It's a humbling thought, a reminder that value hides in plain sight and that fortune often rewards the observant, not just the wealthy. Every collector knows this feeling, that sudden surge of adrenaline when a familiar coin reveals an unfamiliar detail. The edges sharpen, your pulse quickens, and the question forms. Could this be the one? The psychology of collecting runs deep. For many, coins aren't simply currency. They're tangible time machines, miniature capsules of American ambition and artistry. The 1970 D Lincoln cent embodies that perfectly. It's not just rare. It's a symbol of how imperfection, when scarce enough, becomes beauty. But rarity alone doesn't create value. Market trends play their part, and the modern numismatic world has changed. In the last decade, high-grade coins have become an alternative investment class. Private equity groups, family offices, and even technology entrepreneurs are quietly moving into rare coins as stores of historical wealth. They're drawn by the same allure that captivated collectors of the past: stability, legacy, and the thrill of owning something unique. The 1970 D doubled die Lincoln cent has benefited immensely from this surge in investor attention. As auction records climb and supply remains fixed, often fewer than 20 verified examples in top condition, the perceived scarcity intensifies. Each new sale becomes an event, each discovery a headline. But what drives a coin like this beyond price tags is the emotional legacy it carries. Every collector dreams not only of wealth but of significance, to hold in their hand a piece of history that outlived empires, recessions, and generations. A small token that can be passed down, its story whispered to children and grandchildren. That's what this coin represents. Legacy through luck and knowledge. Because owning one isn't just about being fortunate. It's about being aware. About knowing what others overlook. And that awareness, that curiosity, is what separates the dreamers from the discoverers. Let's return for a moment to that pivotal year, 1970. Gas cost 36 cents a gallon. The Beatles were breaking up. The average home sold for under $24,000. Amid this backdrop of cultural upheaval, the U.S. Mint pressed millions of ordinary coins, and a few dozen extraordinary ones. No one at the Denver facility that day could have imagined that their mistake, an unnoticed die mix-up, would one day create million-dollar headlines. It's poetic, really. History has a way of turning accidents into artifacts, and so the question becomes, what other hidden treasures lie undiscovered among America's circulating change? If a 1-cent coin from half a century ago can reach such astronomical value, what might the next overlooked rarity be? Collectors whisper of 1983 copper transitional errors, 1969 S doubled dies, and the ghostly 1943 bronze cents, all it. Reminders that the Mint's history is rich with unintentional masterpieces. Each new discovery rekindles the hunt, and that's why this pursuit never fades. It's not just about collecting coins. It's about collecting stories, collecting possibilities, collecting hope. But before you rush to sift through your old jars of change, remember, not every coin with a doubled number is the real deal. The market is awash with near misses and clever imitations. Authenticating such a rarity requires expertise, magnification, comparison with verified specimens, and sometimes even metallurgical analysis. That's where the seasoned numismatists come in, the quiet guardians of American coin heritage. They know the patterns, the texture of genuine minting errors, the subtle luster that only decades of careful preservation can produce. And when they find one, they know it instantly. The next time you hold an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from 1970 with the Denver mintmark, look closer. Not just at the date or the color of the copper, but at the story it tells. Could it be a common coin destined to vanish into another handful of change? Or could it be one of the few, the legendary few, that escaped into circulation against all odds? That uncertainty, that maybe, is the spark that ignites collectors' hearts. Because sometimes, wealth doesn't knock on the door. Sometimes it jingles quietly in your pocket. Imagine the moment when a collector, decades from now, uncovers your coin, encased, documented, and gleaming. They'll trace its origins, marvel at its rarity, and whisper your name among the legends who found fortune where others saw only copper. That is the legacy of the 1970 D Lincoln 1-cent coin. Not just its value, but its lesson, a reminder that history rewards those who pay attention. And perhaps that destiny hides in the smallest of details. So tonight, as you set your change aside, pause for a moment before tossing those coins into a jar, because hidden among them might be not just a piece of American currency, but a story worth nearly $1 million, a story that began in 1970 when a small minting error slipped past human eyes, and waited patiently for over half a century to be discovered by yours. The next time you hold that reddish glint of copper, ask yourself, what if the fortune you've been searching for has been resting in your hand all along? Have you ever held something so ordinary, so small, that you never imagined it could change your life? Imagine reaching into an old coffee can of coins, just loose change, and pulling out a 1976 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint. It's brown, worn, and for a moment you almost toss it aside. But what if that tiny coin, weighing just over 3 grams, wasn't worth a single cent, but closer to $854,000? It sounds impossible. Yet in the mysterious world of numismatics, where history, rarity, and human obsession intertwine, impossibility is often just another word for undiscovered. The year was 1976, America's bicentennial, a time of fireworks, parades, and an explosion of patriotic pride. Every coin, from the silver half-dollar to the humble 1-cent piece, carried echoes of that national celebration. But the Denver Mint, busy producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents, had no idea that a handful of their creations would one day become legends whispered about in collector circles. So what makes a 1976 D, Abraham Lincoln? 1-cent coin, something that millions of people once spent on bubble gum, so valuable today? It's not luck. It's not hype. It's the hidden marriage of history, minting anomalies, and human desire for legacy. Collectors often say, rarity is born, not made. And in this case, it was born quietly, deep in the machinery of the Denver Mint, where molten copper alloy met die steel in perfect-imperfect union. Most 1976 D Lincoln cents were ordinary bronze-clad pieces, 95% copper, 5% zinc, and tin. But a few, just a few, slipped through with striking errors so rare they've become modern myths. Some display double-die obverses, others off-center strikes or planchets from the wrong metal composition, remnants from the transitional periods of American minting. Now, imagine this. A single misalignment in the minting die, invisible to the naked eye, can turn a mass-produced coin into a one-of-a-kind relic. That's what collectors dream of. The intersection where history and chance collide. One such specimen surfaced at auction, authenticated by third-party grading experts under sealed acrylic. Its surface shimmered with a slightly off-red luster, the D mintmark crisp yet fractionally displaced. Under magnification, the date 1976 bore microscopic doubling, proof of a rare die error. Bidders didn't just see copper. They saw a fingerprint of history. When the hammer fell, that single cent sold for nearly $854,000. But why would anyone pay that much for a coin you could once find in your pocket change? The answer lies in something deeper than metal. It lies in meaning. For collectors, each coin is a fragment of America's evolving story. The 1976 Lincoln cent wasn't just minted during the bicentennial. It symbolized endurance. A portrait of a president who preserved the Union, struck during a celebration of that Union's 200th year. Owning one isn't just owning copper, it's holding continuity. And yet beneath that emotional layer, there's the thrill of the hunt. The market for rare Lincoln cents has always had a heartbeat of speculation and romance. The late 20th century saw a new generation of investors realizing that coins weren't just historical trinkets. They were tangible, portable assets, immune to stock market chaos. In uncertain times, collectors turn to what endures: metal, art, and memory. The 1976 D Lincoln cent's rise from obscurity mirrors this psychology perfectly. It's the hidden treasure archetype, a reminder that wealth can hide in plain sight. Many Americans today have jars or drawers filled with old coins, forgotten, dusty, ignored. But history whispers through those piles. Somewhere, perhaps in your home, lies a coin with a misstrike so subtle that even a professional might overlook it. Here's the irony. During the 1970s, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins annually. Errors were inevitable, but few escaped quality control. When they did, they often went unnoticed, spent, circulated, lost. Today, each rediscovered error coin feels like a time capsule reopened. Ask any serious numismatist, and they'll tell you the same truth. The real power of coin collecting isn't in possession, it's in discovery. The emotional surge when you identify something rare is unlike any financial gain. It's the thrill of realizing that history chose you as its next custodian. But let's pause for a moment. Why 1976 specifically? Why do collectors revere that date so much? Because it marks a turning point. The bicentennial stirred a nationwide surge in patriotic collecting. The U.S. Mint released commemorative designs on the quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins, but not on the humble cent. The Lincoln 1-cent coin remained unchanged, quietly dignified amid the national fanfare. That constancy gave it a unique status. It became the silent witness to celebration, unchanged yet essential. And in that contrast lies its beauty. Fast forward to today. Online auction houses, numismatic expos, and private collections are buzzing with renewed interest in mid-20th century mint errors. The 1970s Lincoln series, once dismissed as common, is now drawing sharp eyes and sharp bids. Why? Because demand follows nostalgia. The collectors of today are the children of that bicentennial era. They remember the jingling coins of their youth, and they're reclaiming them, not as currency, but as legacy artifacts. One notable expert once remarked, "The 1976 D. Lincoln cent is more than a coin. It's a time traveler." Each one carries microscopic traces of the era's metallurgy, the minting pressure, even the environmental oxidation unique to its composition. When you study one under a loupe, you're not just examining copper, you're reading the biography of a nation. Now, here's a thought that might surprise you. Some of the most valuable coins ever found weren't discovered by professional collectors at all. They were found by ordinary people. A retired teacher in Arizona once identified a 1976 D cent with an off-metal strike, worth tens of thousands. A young boy sorting through his grandfather's change collection in Ohio found another, later appraised near 6 figures. They weren't experts. They were curious. That's the power of curiosity. It turns pocket change into potential fortune. So what should you look for? Subtle markers, doubling on the obverse inscriptions, misaligned D mint marks, a slightly different hue of copper suggesting a transitional planchet, or an unusually sharp strike on Lincoln's bust. Even a faint mechanical doubling can drastically change a coin's market trajectory. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC have certified only a handful of high-grade specimens from this year. And when one appears, it sets off a bidding frenzy. Think about that. The difference between a 1-cent coin and an $854,000 treasure could be less than a millimeter's variation in die pressure. This is what makes numismatics both art and science. The art lies in seeing beauty where others see metal. The science lies in the meticulous observation, the magnifiers, microscopes, and mint record comparisons. Every serious collector knows, details determine destiny. But here's a subtle truth. What truly drives the value of coins like the 1976 D. Lincoln cent isn't only rarity. It's story scarcity. When a coin carries a compelling story, bicentennial backdrop, presidential legacy, minting anomaly, it transcends the market. Investors, historians, even artists compete to own that story. Because when you hold it, you're not just holding copper, you're holding the weight of time. And yet, not every treasure reveals itself easily. Many of these ultra-rare coins are still out there, circulating quietly, maybe lodged in a vending machine, or buried in an attic jar labeled old pennies. That's what keeps the chase alive. The idea that the next extraordinary find could belong to anyone willing to look closer. Here's a question. When was the last time you looked closely at a coin before spending it? When did you last feel that spark of wonder from childhood, the feeling that something small could hold unimaginable value? That's what this hobby restores. It reconnects us to curiosity, to patience, to hope, because at its core, coin collecting isn't about wealth. It's about legacy. The greatest collectors of the past century, from Eliasberg to Newman, didn't hoard coins merely for profit. They curated history, ensuring that future generations could trace the nation's story through metal and mintmark. And perhaps that's what the 1976 D. Lincoln cent really represents, a symbol of endurance, a whisper from America's bicentennial, reminding us that even the smallest artifacts of daily life can become priceless if preserved with intention. So the next time you pass a handful of change, pause. Look closer. That faint glint of copper could be a remnant of 1976, a year when America celebrated its 200th breath of freedom. and when a few extraordinary cents quietly defied their destiny. Imagine the story. You, holding a coin once worth a cent, now valued at nearly $1 million. Imagine the legacy you'd create, the disbelief, the wonder, the pride. It's not fantasy, it's history. Rediscovered, because somewhere out there, hidden among billions, lies the next 1976 D. Lincoln 1-cent coin destined to rewrite someone's fortune, and who knows, maybe, just maybe, it's already in your hands. They say fortune favors the bold, but in the world of coin collecting, it often favors the observant. Imagine this, a simple Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, dull copper brown resting in the palm of your hand. You've seen thousands like it. You might even have a jar full of them tucked away somewhere. But what if one of those ordinary little coins, one without a mint mark, was worth nearly $1 million? Yes, a single 1977 Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Philadelphia Mint, with no mint mark, has recently been valued in the range of $848,000. How can something so small, so familiar, command a value greater than most homes in America? That's where our story begins. To understand this mystery, we must travel back to the late 1970s, a period of transition and quiet revolution in American coinage. Inflation was biting hard. The copper used in coins was becoming more expensive than the coins themselves. Meanwhile, the U.S. Mint was under pressure to modernize its production, automate the stamping process, and cut costs. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, had already seen countless modifications, subtle changes in relief, variations in designer initials, and shifts in metal composition. But 1977 brought something more subtle, something nearly invisible, that would turn a few of these coins into hidden legends. See, the Philadelphia Mint traditionally produced coins without a mint mark. Denver carried the D, San Francisco used an S. So technically, every Philadelphia 1-cent coin from 1977 should not have a mint mark. But here's the twist. Not all 1977 no mint mark coins are created equal. Some carry minute differences, variations in the strike, in the die, in the composition itself, that separate the extraordinary from the ordinary, and it's in those microscopic details that a fortune can hide. Now picture this. A collector at a Midwest coin show sifts through a dealer's junk bin, a plastic tub filled with hundreds of worn copper cents sold for a few dollars per pound. He's been doing this for years, more out of habit than expectation. Then something catches his eye. A coin that looks sharper, cleaner, crisper than the rest. He flips it under a magnifier. The fields mirror-like. The strike unusually bold. The surface untouched by circulation. No mint mark. 1977. His pulse quickens. He feels that familiar tingle, the sixth sense that every seasoned collector knows. Could it be? He pays 20 cents for the coin. 20 cents for what might soon become an $848,000 artifact. When the coin later appears at auction, under the bright lights and whispers of a numismatic crowd, even the experts hesitate. It's flawless, almost impossibly preserved. Its luster glows with the kind of coppery brilliance that only a perfect strike from an untouched die can produce. Certified by one of the leading grading services, it earns a top population grade, the highest ever recorded for its year and variety. That's when the bidding war begins, because in this world, rarity is only half the equation. Condition is king for collectors and investors alike. That's where the thrill lies, the knowledge that perfection, especially in something meant to be ordinary, is the rarest commodity of all. But let's pause for a moment. Why would anyone pay nearly $1 million for a coin that was printed by the millions? Because rarity is not always about how many exist. It's about how many have survived. The 1977 Lincoln 1-cent coins were workhorses of American commerce. They rattled in lunch counters, vending machines, and grocery store tills. Children stacked them into piles on bedroom carpets. They were tossed into jars, left in pockets, exposed to time. Out of hundreds of millions minted, only a handful escaped circulation untouched. Only a few remained in pristine, mint-state perfection. And among those, perhaps just one, the perfect storm of flawless strike, ideal preservation, and historic context, earned its place as the world's most valuable example. That's the power of chance and of patience. There's also psychology at play. Coin collecting has always been a mirror reflecting our need for continuity, for tangible history. When you hold a 1977 no mint mark Lincoln cent, you're not just holding metal, you're holding a year, an era, a nation trying to find its balance between tradition and change. In the late 70s, America was emerging from turmoil. The optimism of the post-war years had faded into oil crises, inflation, and uncertainty. Yet the coins of the time, humble, unchanging, reminded people of something steady. The face of Lincoln had endured through wars, recessions, and revolutions. He looked the same on every coin, decade after decade. Maybe that's why collectors chase them so fiercely. It's not just about profit, it's about preservation of identity. And here's the irony. While modern investors chase digital assets and speculative stocks, some of the most reliable long-term performers have been coins. Over the past 2 decades, high-grade rare cents have quietly outperformed many traditional investments. The market for top-tier Lincoln cents, especially those from transitional years or unusual minting conditions, has been steadily climbing. Serious investors understand this. The supply is fixed. The demand grows with every generation that rediscovers the magic of numismatics. It's not a bubble. It's a reflection of legacy. When you buy a rare coin, you're not just buying an object. You're buying permanence in a world that changes too fast. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Think about this. There are roughly 330 million Americans today. And yet there may be fewer than 10 flawless 1977 no mint mark Lincoln cents in existence. Statistically, you have a better chance of being struck by lightning twice than finding one, but someone, somewhere, will. That's the intoxicating part, the unknown. Every time you open a roll of old coins, every time you check your change, there's a sliver of possibility that something extraordinary is hiding there, and it's that sliver that keeps collectors searching long after they've made their fortunes. Many new investors in rare coins start with silver dollars or gold pieces, thinking bigger means better. But the most profound treasures often come in the smallest packages. The Lincoln Cent series is one of the most studied, most loved, and yet most underestimated fields in numismatics. Within its simple copper frame lies a universe of stories. Double dies, repunched mint marks, transitional errors, and overlooked varieties that can turn a casual find into a 6-figure discovery. That's why experts say the smallest coin can build the largest legacy. Because when you find something unique, something history forgot to tell you about, you're not just holding money, you're holding a story that the world will pay to hear. Now, let's look deeper into why the 1977 no mint mark coin has become an icon of hidden value. First, there's the metallurgy. 1977 was one of the last full copper. Years before the shift toward copper-plated zinc in 1982, that transition makes these earlier copper issues more desirable. For purists who value true metal coins, solid, enduring, and weighty in the hand. Then there's the human factor, the engraver's art. Frank Gasparo's enduring design of Lincoln's profile, coupled with the sharp rendering of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, reached a level of craftsmanship rarely matched afterward. In 1977, minting technology was still a blend of machine precision and human touch. Dies were hand-finished, meaning subtle variances could occur. Some dies produced strikes of extraordinary clarity before wearing down. Those coins, born from fresh dies, preserved in mint state, became the elite few. And for collectors, those few are everything. But there's also something deeper at play here, nostalgia. If you grew up in the 1970s or 1980s, you remember the sound of change clinking on the counter, the weight of a handful of cents in your palm. Maybe you bought a soda with one of those very coins, never realizing its potential. Maybe it passed through your father's hands, your grandfather's. Now, decades later, that same design, unchanged since childhood, carries a whisper of the past. It's not just metal, it's memory. And memory, when preserved perfectly, becomes priceless. So what does this all mean for you? the collector, the investor, the seeker of legacy. It means opportunity still exists in the smallest corners of the market. It means vigilance pays off. It means that in a jar of forgotten change or a sealed roll from a bank vault, history might still be waiting to reward the eyes that can see it, because the 1977 no-mint-mark Lincoln cent isn't just a coin. It's a symbol, a reminder that value isn't always announced. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize it. And those who do, they're the ones who write the next chapter of numismatic legend. One final thought. If you hold a coin tonight, any coin, turn it under the light. Look closer. Notice the tiny imperfections, the play of shadow and shine. Somewhere on one of those surfaces is the story of a nation, its craftsmanship, its struggle, its pride. And once in a great while, that story becomes worth more than gold. So keep looking. Keep learning. Keep believing that somewhere, hidden among the ordinary, the extraordinary still exists. Because one day, maybe not today or tomorrow, you'll reach into that old jar and feel something different, something special, and that small copper coin in your palm might just be the next $848,000 miracle.